The Galactic Military Academy floated in the darkness of space like a metal moon that someone had built piece by piece over 300 years. Station Horizon 7 was its official name, but most species simply called it the Breaker, because that is what it did to young soldiers. It broke them down and built them back up into warriors. Instructor Velmox had worked at the Breaker for 42 years. He was an insectoid creature standing 7 feet tall with 4 arms and mandibles that could cut through steel. His exoskeleton was the color of dried blood, and his compound eyes could see in 17 different spectrums of light. He had trained soldiers from over 200 different species, and he took great pride in one simple fact. Every single recruit he had ever trained had screamed during the proving chamber test. Every single one. Today was the first day of the new training cycle, and Velmox stood before his latest class of recruits in the massive orientation hall. There were 47 cadets in total, representing 12 different species. Most of them were large and dangerous looking. The Varax warriors stood 8 feet tall, with natural bone armor growing from their skin. The Theshan shock troops had 4 legs and 2 massive arms ending in hammer-like fists. The Krill scouts were small, but their venomous spines could kill in seconds. And then there were the 2 humans. Velmox let his gaze settle on them with something between curiosity and contempt. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only achieved faster than light travel 23 years ago, and they had only been accepted into the Galactic Alliance 7 years after that. This was the first year the Academy had agreed to accept human cadets. Looking at them now, Velmox wondered why the Academy had bothered. The female was called Emily Park. She stood 5 feet and 6 inches tall, which made her the smallest recruit in the entire class. She had black hair pulled back in a tight bun and brown eyes that seemed to be looking at everything and nothing at the same time. Her service record said she had grown up on a farm in a place called Kansas and had joined the United Earth military at age 18. She was now 24. The male was called David Kim. He was slightly taller than his fellow human at 5 feet and 10 inches. He had short black hair and a calm face that rarely showed emotion. His record said he had been born in a city called Seattle and had worked as some kind of animal handler before joining the military. Velmox did not understand why handling animals would be useful military experience, but humans were strange creatures. Both of them looked soft, weak, breakable. Velmox clicked his mandibles together to get the attention of the class. The sound was sharp and loud like 2 swords clashing, and all 47 recruits snapped to attention immediately. Even the humans responded correctly, which meant they had at least been trained in basic discipline. "Welcome to the Breaker," he said, and his voice was a harsh rasp that echoed through the hall. "I am Instructor Velmox. For the next 16 months, I will be your teacher and your tormentor and your worst nightmare. Most of you will not make it to graduation. Some of you will die. This is not a threat. This is a statistical fact." He began to walk slowly along the line of recruits. His 4 arms were clasped behind his back, and his compound eyes examined each cadet in turn. "The Galactic Alliance faces threats that most civilians cannot even imagine," he continued. "There are horrors in the dark spaces between stars. There are species so violent and so alien that communication with them is impossible. There are things that will eat your body and things that will eat your mind. The soldiers who graduate from this academy are the ones who stand between those horrors and the innocent billions who sleep peacefully in their beds." He stopped in front of Emily Park and looked down at her. She met his gaze without flinching, which was either brave or stupid. "Probably both. This year we have something new," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Humans, the newest species to join our alliance. I have read the reports about your kind. You come from a death world. Your planet has extreme temperatures and massive predators and natural disasters that would wipe out most species. And yet, you survived. You thrived. You conquered your world and reached for the stars. He leaned closer to Emily, until his mandibles were inches from her face. But surviving on your little rock is not the same as surviving out here. Out here, the monsters are bigger. The darkness is deeper. And there is no one coming to save you when you scream. Emily did not blink. She did not step back. She simply said, "Yes, sir." Velmox felt a flicker of annoyance. He had expected fear. He had expected at least a small reaction. But the human female showed nothing. He stepped back and addressed the entire class again. "Tomorrow you will face your first test, the proving chamber. This test has been used by the Academy for 273 years. It is simple. You will enter a chamber alone and you will face a Ravager." A murmur went through the recruits. Even the massive Varax warriors shifted nervously. Everyone in the galaxy knew what a Ravager was. The Ravager is a Class 7 apex predator from the Death World, Karnt Velmox explained. It stands 12 feet tall and weighs over 2,000 pounds. It has 6 legs ending in claws that can tear through starship armor. Its head contains a vertical mouth with 3 rows of rotating teeth. It can see in complete darkness, and it can smell fear from half a mile away. He paused to let that sink in. The Ravager in our proving chamber has been with the Academy for 4 years. In that time, it has killed 43 cadets. These were controlled kills, meaning we allowed them to happen because the cadets in question proved themselves unworthy. They froze. They broke. They were not fit to serve in the Alliance military. David Kim raised his hand. Velmox looked at him with surprise. No one ever asked questions during this speech. "Yes, human. Sir, what is the purpose of the test exactly? Are we supposed to kill the Ravager or escape from it or something else?" Velmo X made a sound that might have been a laugh. "The purpose is to see how you react when faced with something that wants to eat you. Some cadets fight. Some cadets run. Some cadets freeze and die. The ones who show courage and quick thinking pass. The ones who do not pass either die or are sent home in shame. And if we just stand there and talk to it?" David asked. The class went silent. Several aliens turned to stare at the human with expressions of disbelief. Velmox clicked his mandibles slowly. "Talk to it. Human, the Ravager is not capable of conversation. It is a pure predator. It exists only to hunt and kill and feed. You cannot reason with it. You cannot bargain with it. You can only fight it or flee from it or die." David nodded slowly. "Just checking, sir." Emily glanced at her fellow human, and something passed between them. Some kind of silent communication that Velmox could not read. It irritated him. "Get some rest tonight," he told the class. "Tomorrow the proving chamber will show us what you are truly made of." Dismissed. The recruits began to file out of the orientation hall. Velmox watched the 2 humans walk away side by side. They were talking quietly to each other, and Emily was actually smiling about something. Velmox felt his mandibles twitch with anticipation. He had seen many species face the Ravager over the years. He had seen 8-foot warriors weep like infants. He had seen soldiers with decades of combat experience freeze in terror. Tomorrow, he would finally see what humans were made of. He was quite certain they would scream. The next morning came too quickly for most of the recruits. Emily Park had slept well, though. She had learned long ago that worrying about tomorrow was a waste of energy that could be better spent on actually dealing with tomorrow when it arrived. She woke up at 0500 hours and did her usual morning routine. 50 push-ups, 50 sit-ups, a 5-minute stretch, then a shower and a light breakfast of protein paste and water. The food at the academy was terrible, but Emily had eaten worse during her survival training back on Earth. David Kim met her outside the barracks at 0600. He looked calm and rested, which was more than could be said for most of their alien classmates. Several of the Veshan shock troops had been up all night talking nervously about the proving chamber. One of the Krill scouts had apparently tried to leave the station entirely and had been stopped by security. Ready for this, David asked. Emily shrugged. Ready as I will ever be. You? David smiled slightly. I have been thinking about what the instructor said. About the Ravager being a pure predator. Something about that does not sit right with me. What do you mean? Well, I used to work at a wildlife sanctuary back home. We had wolves and bears and big cats. All apex predators. And one thing I learned is that there is no such thing as a pure predator. Every animal has behaviors beyond just hunting. They play, they rest, they form social bonds. Even the most dangerous creatures have moments of vulnerability and curiosity. Emily nodded slowly. You think the Ravager might be more than just a killing machine? I think every creature wants something besides just its next meal. The question is figuring out what. Before Emily could respond, the morning alarm sounded throughout the station. It was time for the proving chamber. The 47 recruits gathered in a large, circular room with reinforced walls and a domed ceiling. In the center of the room was a massive door made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Above the door was an observation deck with thick windows where Instructor Volmox and several other Academy officials stood watching. Volmox spoke through a speaker system that made his rasping voice even harsher. Welcome to the proving chamber. Behind this door is the Ravager. You will enter one at a time. The door will seal behind you. You will have exactly 10 minutes to demonstrate your worth. If you survive and show courage, you pass. If you die or break down, you fail. Any questions? No one spoke. Good. The order of testing will be random. First name is Torvik of the Varax. A massive warrior stepped forward. He was one of the largest Varax in the class, with bone plates covering most of his body and hands that could crush stone. He walked toward the dark door without hesitation, but Emily could see the tension in his shoulders. The door opened with a sound like grinding teeth. Beyond it was only darkness. Torvik stepped inside, and the door closed behind him. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the screaming started. It was a terrible sound. Not just fear, but absolute primal terror. The kind of scream that came from somewhere deeper than the throat. Somewhere in the ancient part of the brain that remembered what it was like to be prey. The screaming lasted for about 30 seconds. Then it stopped abruptly. A few minutes later, the door opened again, and Torvik stumbled out. He was alive, but his eyes were wild and unfocused. His bone plates were cracked in several places, and there was blood dripping from wounds on his arms. 2 medical officers rushed forward to help him. Torvik of the Varax. Velmox announced. Pass. Barely. The next recruit was called. And the next. And the next. Each one entered the chamber. Each one screamed. Some fought well and earned respect. Others broke down completely and had to be rescued before the Ravager killed them. 3 cadets were carried out with serious injuries. 1 did not come out at all. Emily watched and listened and learned. The Ravager was fast. That much was clear from the sounds of combat inside the chamber. It was also smart enough to toy with its prey. Several cadets reported that it had circled them in the darkness for minutes before attacking. It liked fear. It fed on terror. But Emily noticed something else too. The cadets who panicked and ran were the ones who got hurt the worst. The ones who stood their ground and showed no fear seemed to confuse the creature. It still attacked them, but with less ferocity, less commitment. Interesting, she thought. David was called before her. He walked toward the door with his usual calm expression. Emily gave him a small nod of encouragement, and he nodded back. The door opened. David stepped inside. The door closed. Emily held her breath and waited. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes. 3. There was no screaming, The other recruits began to murmur among themselves. Even Instructor Velmox leaned forward with visible confusion. In 4 years of using the same Ravager, not a single cadet had lasted this long without making a sound. 5 minutes. 6 minutes. Still nothing. Then finally the door opened and David walked out. He was completely unharmed. Not a scratch on him. His uniform was not even wrinkled. The chamber was silent with shock. "Specialist," Kim Velmox said slowly. "Report." David looked up at the observation deck. "The creature did not attack me, sir. Explain. I stood still and made no threatening movements. When it approached me, I spoke to it calmly. I let it smell me. After a few minutes, it lost interest and went back to the far corner of the chamber. I waited until my time was up, and then the door opened." Velmox stared at him for a long moment. His mandibles clicked rapidly, which Emily had learned was a sign of agitation. "You spoke to it," he repeated. "Yes, sir. I told it that I was not there to hurt it. I told it that it was okay. Just basic calming words. The same thing I used to do with scared animals back home. The Ravager is not a scared animal. It is an apex predator." David shrugged slightly. "Every predator gets scared sometimes, sir. Being locked in a room and having strangers thrown at you day after day for years would make anyone stressed. I think the Ravager is tired. And lonely." The other recruits were staring at David like he had grown a second head. Even Emily was impressed. She had expected David to use his animal handling experience, but she had not expected it to work this well. Velmox made a harsh sound that might have been anger or disbelief. Or both. "Specialist Kim. Pass. Next name." Private Park. Emily stepped forward. The dark door loomed before her like the mouth of some great beast. Which she supposed it kind of was. She thought about what David had done. What he had said. The Ravager was tired. And lonely. Emily understood loneliness. She had grown up on a farm in the middle of nowhere with no siblings and parents who worked 16 hours a day. Her best friend for most of her childhood had been a German shepherd named Biscuit. He had been huge and scary, looking with teeth that could tear through bone. The neighbors had all been terrified of him, but Biscuit had been the gentlest soul Emily had ever known. He just needed someone to see past the teeth and the growls. Someone to show him kindness. Maybe the Ravager was the same. The door opened. Emily took a deep breath and stepped into the darkness. The door closed behind her with a sound of finality, and Emily smiled. The darkness inside the proving chamber was absolute. Emily could not see her own hand in front of her face. The emergency lighting that other cadets had mentioned was not active yet, which meant the creature was still in hunting mode. It wanted its prey blind and terrified. Emily stood perfectly still and let her other senses take over. She could hear the hum of the air recycling system somewhere above her. She could smell metal and old blood and something else. Something animal and musky and wild. The smell of a predator, and she could hear breathing. It was coming from somewhere to her left. Deep, slow breaths that rattled slightly on the exhale. The creature was big. Much bigger than anything Emily had ever encountered on Earth. But size did not matter as much as people thought. What mattered was understanding. "Hey, there," Emily said softly. Her voice echoed slightly in the chamber. "I know you are there. I can hear you breathing." The breathing paused for a moment. Then continued. "My name is Emily. I'm not here to hurt you. I am not here to fight you. I am just here to say hello." She heard movement. Heavy footsteps circling around her in the darkness. The creature was testing her, waiting for her to panic, waiting for the fear to start. Emily did not feel afraid. She felt sad. This creature had been locked in this room for 4 years. Day after day, strangers were thrown in with it. Most of them attacked it or ran from it or screamed until its ears hurt. It had never known kindness. It had never known peace. It was a prisoner being used to torture other prisoners. No wonder it was angry. The emergency lights flickered on, bathing the chamber in dim red light. And Emily finally saw this RAVAGER. It was magnificent. 12 feet tall at the shoulder, with 6 powerful legs ending in curved claws, each one as long as her forearm. Its body was covered in scales that shifted between black and deep purple as it moved. Its head was the most alien part. A vertical mouth split the face in half, lined with rows of teeth that rotated slowly like some kind of organic grinding machine. 4 eyes sat above the mouth, 2 on each side, glowing faintly yellow in the red light. The creature was circling her slowly. Its eyes were fixed on her face. It was waiting for the scream. Emily smiled instead. "Oh my goodness," she said, and her voice was warm with genuine affection. "Look at you. You are beautiful." The Ravager stopped moving. Its 4 eyes blinked in a pattern that seemed almost confused. Emily continued. She kept her voice soft and calm, like she was talking to a nervous horse. "You are absolutely gorgeous. Look at those scales. Look at those claws. I bet you were the most impressive thing on your home world, huh?" The creature tilted its massive head. In 4 years of the proving chamber, no one had ever complimented it before. Emily slowly lowered herself to the ground. She sat cross-legged on the cold metal floor, making herself as small and non-threatening as possible. Then she patted the ground next to her. "Come here," she said. "Come say hello. I promise I will not hurt you." The Ravager did not move. Its eyes were still fixed on her, but the aggression in its posture was fading. It seemed genuinely uncertain about what to do with this strange tiny creature that showed no fear. "I had a dog once," Emily said conversationally. "Back on Earth. His name was Biscuit. He was a German Shepherd, which is a type of large canine. Very scary looking. Big teeth. Loud bark. Everyone in my neighborhood was terrified of him." She smiled at the memory. But Biscuit was actually the sweetest boy in the whole world. He just wanted belly rubs and treats and someone to play fetch with him. He looked scary because that is how his species evolved. But inside he was just a big softy who wanted to be loved. The Ravager took a step closer. Then another. Its claws scraped against the metal floor, but the sound was almost hesitant. "You remind me of him, actually," Emily said. "Same energy. Everyone sees the teeth and the claws, and they run away screaming. But I bet no one has ever just sat down and talked to you, have they? No one has ever tried to be your friend." The creature was close now. Close enough that Emily could feel the heat radiating from its massive body. Close enough that one swipe of its claws could cut her in half. She did not flinch. Instead, she slowly raised her hand palm up and held it out toward the creature. "It is okay," she whispered. "You can trust me." The Ravager lowered its enormous head. Its 4 eyes studied her hand with something that looked almost like curiosity. Then, slowly, carefully, it pressed its snout against her palm. Its scales were warm and surprisingly smooth. Emily could feel the creature trembling slightly, like it had never been touched gently before. "There you go," she said softly. "See, that is not so bad, is it?" The Ravager made a sound. Not a growl or a roar, but something softer. Something almost like a whimper. Like a creature that had been alone for so long that it had forgotten what kindness felt like. Emily felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them away and kept her hand steady against the creature face. "You poor thing," she murmured. "How long have you been in here all alone? How long since anyone treated you like a living being instead of a monster?" The creature pressed closer. Its massive body curled around Emily like a cat seeking warmth. She could feel the rumble in its chest. Not quite a purr, but something similar. A sound of contentment that probably no one in the academy had ever heard before. Emily reached up with her other hand and began to scratch behind what she assumed were its sensory ridges. The scales there were softer and more sensitive. The creature made that whimpering sound again and pressed harder into her touch. "Yeah," she said with a small laugh. "You like that, huh? Big scary monster just wants some scratches." "I knew it." She settled back against the creature's warm bulk and kept scratching. The Ravager had completely relaxed now. Its 6 legs were sprawled out on the floor, and its eyes were half closed with pleasure. "I am going to call you Kitty," Emily announced. "Because you are basically just a big weird cat." "Yes, you are." The creature that had killed 43 cadets and terrorized hundreds more made a sound that could only be described as Happy Dot and Emily Park sat in the darkness of the proving chamber, scratching an apex predator behind the ears and wondering why everyone in the galaxy was so afraid of things they did not understand. Up in the observation deck, Instructor Velmox stared down at the scene with all 4 of his compound eyes. His mandibles had stopped clicking. His entire body had gone rigid with shock. In 42 years of training soldiers, he had never seen anything like this. The human female was supposed to scream. She was supposed to fight or flee or die. That was how the test worked. That was how it had always worked. But instead, she was sitting on the floor, cuddling with the most dangerous creature in the academy, like it was some kind of pet. What Velmox whispered, and his voice cracked with disbelief. "What are these humans?" No one had an answer. The observation deck had gone completely silent. 45 recruits and a dozen academy officials stood frozen, staring through the reinforced windows at something that should have been impossible. Private Emily Park was giving belly rubs to the Ravager. The creature had rolled onto its side, all 6 legs twitching in the air as the tiny human scratched its underbelly. The sound coming from its chest was unmistakably a purr, a deep rumbling vibration that made the observation windows tremble slightly. David Kim stood at the front of the crowd with a small smile on his face. He had known Emily would figure it out. She had always been better with animals than anyone he had ever met. There was something about her energy that made even the most aggressive creatures calm down and trust her. One of the Varax warriors turned to David with an expression of absolute bewilderment. How he demanded, "How is she doing this? The Ravager has killed dozens of cadets. It shows no mercy. It knows no fear. And your female is treating it like a domestic pet." David considered the question carefully before answering. "On our world, we have a saying," he said. "There is no such thing as a bad animal, only bad circumstances. That creature down there has been locked in a dark room for 4 years with no companionship and no stimulation except for terrified prey. Anyone would become aggressive under those conditions. Emily just showed it that not everyone wants to hurt it." The Varax shook his massive head. His bone plates clicked together with agitation. "This makes no sense. The Ravager is an apex predator from Corinth. Corinth is one of the most dangerous worlds in the known galaxy. The creatures there evolved to be perfect killing machines. They do not form bonds. They do not feel affection. They only hunt and feed and reproduce." David laughed softly. "You just described about half the animals on Earth. We have creatures that would give you nightmares. Sharks that can smell a drop of blood from miles away. Bears that can tear through metal with their claws. Crocodiles that have barely changed in 200 million years because they are already perfect predators. And humans tamed these creatures. Some of them, yeah. The ones we could not tame, we learned to coexist with. We figured out their behaviors and their needs and their fears. We learned that even the most dangerous animal in the world will usually leave you alone if you understand it well enough. Instructor Velmox had been listening to this conversation with growing unease. He turned his compound eyes toward David and spoke in a harsh whisper. "Are you saying that humans regularly interact with apex predators on your world?" David nodded. We do more than interact with them, sir. We invite them into our homes. We let them sleep in our beds. We feed them and care for them and love them like family members. You domesticated apex predators, Velmox said slowly, as if he could not quite believe the words coming out of his own mouth. We domesticated wolves, David said. Turned them into dogs. We took wild cats and made them into house cats. We tamed horses and elephants and even some birds of prey. Humans have been forming partnerships with dangerous animals for tens of thousands of years. It is kind of our thing. A Veshan shock trooper pushed forward through the crowd. Her four legs stamped nervously on the floor, and her massive hammer fists were clenched tight. This is madness, she said. You are describing insanity. Why would any species willingly bring predators into their living spaces? The risk of death would be constant. David shrugged. The benefits outweigh the risks. Dogs help us hunt and guard our homes. Cats kill pests that would eat our food supplies. Horses let us travel faster than we could on foot. Humans figured out pretty early that working with dangerous animals was better than fighting against them. The Veshan stared at him. Then she stared down at Emily, who was now lying on her back using the Ravager as a pillow while she scratched under its chin. Your species is insane, she repeated. Probably, David agreed cheerfully. But it works for us. Down in the chamber, Emily was having the time of her life. Kitty had turned out to be incredibly affectionate when she got past the whole terrifying monster thing. The creature seemed starved for physical contact. Every time Emily stopped scratching, it would nudge her hand with its massive head until she started again. You have been so lonely, Emily murmured. All alone in the dark with no one to talk to. No wonder you lash out at everyone who comes in here. You are not mean. You are just sad. Kitty made a soft rumbling sound that vibrated through Emily's entire body. She could feel the creature heartbeat through its scales. It was slowing down, calming. The tension that had been wound tight in its muscles for years was finally starting to release. I'm going to get you out of here, Emily promised. I do not know how yet, but I'm going to figure it out. You deserve better than this. You deserve to see the stars and feel the sun on your scales and run around in open spaces. You deserve to be free. The creature four eyes blinked at her. Emily could swear she saw understanding in them. Maybe even gratitude. She lost track of time lying there with Kitty. It might have been minutes or it might have been an hour. The red emergency lights had shifted to a softer white at some point, which meant the test was technically over. But no one seemed willing to open the door and interrupt whatever was happening. Finally, Instructor. Velmox's voice crackled through a speaker in the chamber. Private Park. Your time is up. Please exit the chamber. Emily sat up slowly. Kitty made a distressed sound and tried to pull her back down with one massive paw. The claws that could tear through starship armor were retracted. The touch was gentle, almost pleading. I know, Emily said softly. I do not want to leave either. But I have to go. I will come back, though. I promise. She stood up, and Kitty stood with her. The creature towered over her, blocking out the light from above. Anyone else would have been terrified. Emily reached up and patted the creature's snout. Be good. Okay. I will figure something out. Just trust me. Kitty made that whimpering sound again. Then, slowly, reluctantly, it stepped back and let Emily walk toward the door. The door opened with a grinding sound. Emily stepped through into the waiting area beyond. The door closed behind her, cutting off her view of Kitty. She turned to face the crowd of recruits and officials who were staring at her in stunned silence. Private Park, Velmox said, and his voice was strange, strained. Pass. Emily nodded. Thank you, sir. She paused and then added permission to speak freely, sir. Velmox's mandibles clicked uncertainly. Granted, that creature should not be in a cage. It is intelligent and emotional, and it has been suffering for years. Using it as a test subject is cruel. If the Academy continues to treat it this way, it will eventually snap completely, and someone will get killed. Not because the Ravager is evil, but because you have given it no other option. The observation deck was completely silent. No one had ever spoken to Instructor Velmox like this. No recruit had ever dared. Velmox stared at Emily for a long moment. His compound eyes reflected her image back at her dozens of times over. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh. Or might have been something else entirely. You are either very brave or very foolish human. Emily shrugged. On Earth, we say those are often the same thing, sir. Velmox turned away from her and looked back at the chamber door. Beyond it, the Ravager waited in the darkness. Alone again. For the first time in 42 years, Instructor Velmox felt something that might have been doubt. 3 days passed after the proving chamber incident. Word spread through the Academy like wildfire. The humans had done something impossible. The female had befriended the Ravager. She had called it Kitty. Emily became something of a celebrity among the cadets. Aliens who had ignored her before now approached her with questions and requests. They wanted to know how she had done it. They wanted to understand how a creature so small and soft could walk into a room with an apex predator and walk out unharmed. She told them the truth. She had simply treated the Ravager like a living being instead of a monster. She had shown it kindness and respect. She had not let fear control her actions that most of the aliens did not understand. Fear was a survival instinct. It was supposed to control your actions. That was the entire point of fear. David tried to explain it differently. Humans feel fear just like everyone else, he said. But we have learned to override it when necessary. We can look at something terrifying and choose to act anyway. We call it courage. The Varax warrior named Torvik had become something like a friend to the two humans after the proving chamber. He followed them around asking endless questions about Earth and human culture. The concept of domesticated predators fascinated him in particular. You keep wolves in your homes, he said, for perhaps the 20th time. Wolves. Pack hunters with knife teeth. We call them dogs now. Emily said patiently. They've changed a lot over the generations. Most of them are pretty friendly. But they were wolves. Yes. About 15,000. Years ago, humans started feeding wolves that hung around our camps. The friendlier wolves got more food. They had puppies that were even friendlier. Over thousands of generations, the wolves became dogs. Torvik boneplates shifted as he processed this information. And you did this on purpose. You deliberately bred predators to be friendly, more or less. We did the same thing with cats and horses and lots of other animals. We call it domestication. This is the most terrifying thing I have ever heard, Torvik said with complete sincerity. Your species looked at deadly predators and thought these would make good friends. Emily laughed. When you put it that way, it does sound a little crazy. On the morning of the 4th day, Emily was summoned to Instructor Velmox's office. She had been expecting this. She had been waiting for the consequences of speaking out against the Academy treatment of the Ravager. But when she arrived, she found something unexpected. Velmox was not alone. With him was a tall figure in formal robes marked with the insignia of the Galactic Alliance High Command. A general or admiral of some kind. Emily did not recognize the species, but they had 6 eyes arranged in a circle around a single nostril and skin that shimmered like oil on water. Private, Pog Velmox said, and his voice was strange, almost respectful. This is Admiral Kesson of Alliance Strategic Command. She has come to discuss your performance in the proving chamber. Emily stood at attention. Admiral. Kesson's 6 eyes studied her for a long moment. At ease, Private. This is not a disciplinary meeting. Quite the opposite, actually. Emily relaxed slightly but remained wary. What do you mean, Admiral? Kesson gestured with one long-fingered hand. Your interaction with the Ravager has been analyzed by our behavioral scientists. What you accomplished should have been impossible. The Ravager species has never been successfully tamed or domesticated by any known civilization. They are considered Class 7 threats, specifically because they cannot be reasoned with or controlled. Emily said nothing. She sensed there was more coming. And yet Kessin continued, you walked into that chamber, and within minutes, the creature was eating out of your hand. Metaphorically speaking, you formed a bond with it. A genuine emotional connection. Our scientists are frankly baffled. I just treated it with kindness, Emily said. That is all. That is not all, Kessin replied firmly. Kindness alone does not explain what happened. There is something about human psychology that allows you to connect with other species in ways we do not fully understand. Your ability to empathize with creatures that are completely alien to you. Your willingness to see past fear and aggression to find the being underneath. These are remarkable traits. She paused, and her 6 eyes seemed to focus more intensely on. Emily faced Dodd. We want you to continue working with the Ravager. Not as a test subject, but as a pilot program. If humans can form bonds with Class 7 predators, there may be applications we have not considered. Combat partnerships. Reconnaissance teams. Search and rescue operations. Emily felt her heart skip a beat. You want me to train Kitty? Kessin made a sound that might have been amusement. Kitty. Yes. We want you to continue developing your relationship with the creature. We will provide resources and support. In exchange, we ask that you document everything you learn. Help us understand how humans do what you do. Emily looked at Velmox. The instructor mandibles were clicking rapidly, but he said nothing. His compound eyes were unreadable. What about the proving chamber? Emily asked. Will Kitty still be used to test cadets? Kessin hesitated. That decision is above my authority. Above my authority. But I will recommend that the practice be suspended. Pending the results of your program. Emily thought about Kitty alone in the darkness, waiting, hoping, trusting that Emily would keep her promise. I will do it, she said. On one condition. Kessin's 6 eyes narrowed. What condition? Kitty gets out of that chamber. She gets proper living quarters with light and space and enrichment. She gets treated like a partner, not a prisoner. If you want my help, those are my terms. The room was silent for a long moment. Velmox looked like he wanted to object, but Kessin raised a hand to stop him. Agreed, the Admiral said. The creature will be relocated to a larger habitat within the week. You will have full access to it at all times. Emily felt a smile spread across her face. The first genuine smile she had worn since entering the Academy. Thank you, Admiral. You will not regret this. Kessin made that amused sound again. I suspect I will not. Welcome to the Alliance, human. You and your species continue to surprise us. 1 week later. Emily stood in the center of a massive habitat dome that had been constructed specifically for Kitty. There were artificial trees and rock formations and a pool of warm water. Simulated sunlight streamed down from panels in the ceiling. It was not perfect, but it was 1,000 times better than the dark chamber. The transport doors opened and Kitty emerged. The creature paused at the threshold, blinking in the unfamiliar light. Then she saw Emily and made a sound of pure joy. 12 feet of apex predator bounded across the habitat and knocked Emily flat on her back. Kitty's enormous head pressed against her chest, purring so loudly that Emily could feel it in her bones. Hey, there, girl, Emily laughed as she wrapped her arms around the creature neck. Told you I would figure it out. Welcome home. David watched from the observation platform above. Beside him, Torvik stood with his mouth hanging open. The human said slowly, The human just got tackled by a Ravager. And she is laughing. David nodded. That is Emily for you. Your species domesticated wolves, Torvik said. You tamed wild cats. And now one of you is cuddling with a Class 7 apex predator. Yep. Torvik turned to look at David directly. His bone plates shifted in what might have been fear or respect or both. The galaxy is not ready for humanity, he said quietly. We thought you were soft, weak, easy prey. But you and none of those things are you. David watched Emily rolling around on the ground with Kitty. Both of them were making sounds of happiness that echoed through the habitat. We are exactly what we appear to be, he said. Small and soft and fragile. We just refuse to let that stop us. He smiled at the Varax warrior. Turns out that is enough. Down in the habitat, Emily Park lay on her back with an apex predator, curled around her like an enormous scaly cat. The creature that had terrorized hundreds of cadets was purring contentedly as Emily scratched. Behind its sensory ridges, the galaxy had expected screams. Instead, it got something far more terrifying. It got humans. And humans had a habit of making friends in the strangest places.